First, I want to say, and I can't see you from now because the flag's in the way. Bliss, good to see you. It's been a long time since I've seen you.
Mitch, good to see you.
Real pleasant surprise. So I was on staff with the John Birch Society for a number of years, and then a few years ago with budget cuts and what have you, I left the staff of the JBS and transitioned over into writing for the New American Magazine, and now I do some other things as well. But most of what I do is freelance writing for the New American Magazine, and written, 6 or so hundred articles for them over the years. Really, if you're not subscribing to the New American, let me put in my personal plug. There's not a finer magazine on the planet for espousing the principles of liberty and freedom as they're found in the Constitution. So if you're not subscribing to the New American, you really ought to. It's a fabulous magazine. And I don't say that because I write for them. I write for them because I know they're fabulous. So what we're going to be talking about tonight, this morning, and I'm going to move kind of quickly because I've got and I had to cut this slideshow down a little bit to sort of tailor it to what we're going to be really focused on this morning. So show of hands, how many people regularly use social media? Facebook, Twitter, okay. YouTube, which counts if you're posting. Doesn't really count if you're just watching videos. Then it's just like, free videos. But so how many people are aware, probably everyone in the room, but I'll get a show of hands. How many people are aware that big tech is bought and paid for by the liberal agenda? Yeah, that's a no-brainer. So the platforms that they develop, and we can do without those platforms. Those platforms can't do without us. I remember years ago I was working in a retail situation, and we had this lady come in. She couldn't be made happy for anything in the world. I tried everything I could to make her happy, and she finally left, threatening never to darken the doors of our building again. And I was like, well, I'm sorry to see you go. And I turned around, and my boss is standing right behind me, the manager of the store and also the vice president of the company, right? And I said, well, Pete, you know what they say? The customer's always right. And he said, yeah, Mitch, they say that, but it's not true. Sometimes the customer is a moron, but that's okay. We need them, and they don't need us. They can buy their stuff anywhere, and that's true here. So we could get by without social media platforms. I noticed not everyone raised their hand. Not everyone is using social media. Those of you who don't regularly use social media, your lives are none the poorer. You're doing all right. They can't do without us, and they are using their platforms to force a liberal agenda down our throats, and they're not doing it. It's not even in the old-fashioned, honest way where they just bury you and marinate you in it. This is much more psychologically manipulative than anything like that. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So social media, censorship, and digital surveillance, which is another major part of this because they are tracking all of your activities across the web if you use their services. And they're not the only ones doing it. The federal government's doing it with the NSA, FBI, CIA, they're all doing it. Other major companies are doing it, not even what you would consider to be tech companies, but they're using tech to do it, and we'll cover that a little bit here. So what is the problem? We're all familiar because of Ed Snowden's revelations, and I don't know who's read his book that just came out on Constitution Day. The name of the book is Permanent Record, but in the upcoming issue of the magazine, I've got a book review of that. Fantastic book. You ought to read it. Ed Snowden's not a perfect guy. His principles are not where ours are. His morals aren't where ours are. He sees the world very differently than you and I do. But when the chips were down, he stood up for what was right. And this book is his telling of why he did what he did. So I understand there's sort of mixed reviews as to who Ed Snowden is and why he did what he did. But you really ought to read the book and let him tell you in his own words. So NSA spying on Americans, corporate spying on Americans, and then, of course, social media, big tech platforms. So what do they gather when we use their services or whatever? So all of your private communications, browsing habits, spending habits, personal records, emails, pictures, videos, phone calls, texts, online maps, online calendars. What can they tell with that? Well, everything about you. So, I mean, they're sweeping up everything, and it really comes down to the power of data mining. But Facebook, or social media in particular, and by the way, I on the front table out here, I've put together a disc of several of the resources that I'm going to be using in this presentation, including all of the, well, let's try that again. including all of the articles that I'm going to reference as part of this. It's probably going to go away again. We'll see what happens. These are available out there. And there's some other things on here as well, including a video tutorial for setting up something that I'm going to be talking to you about that I also have available on a USB stick out there. And there are, I don't know, 150 some odd articles from the New American, both print and online, on the disc. It's available out front for $10. So if you're interested, and I don't want anybody to buy anything you don't need, but I did tell my son that I would try to sell enough so he could get the surgery and run and jump and play like other kids. So, no pressure, no pressure. So Facebook tracks users without consent, but users can take control. Now, this is an article I wrote in 2015. It hasn't really changed. So Facebook uses a variety of methods, including what are called tracking cookies. We all know about cookies, but tracking pixels. So let's say you have cookies turned completely off on your computer. You're just not accepting cookies. Don't want your cookies, Facebook. Fine. So what they've got is they've got a 1-by-1 GIF image, 1 pixel by 1 pixel. You don't even see it on the screen. But because that GIF is active, your computer has to, there's code in your operating system that allows that GIF to play. And while it's playing, it allows them to track you across the web. So go ahead, close out Facebook and open up your banking account. They know you just went to your bank. Do an embarrassing internet search for a medical question you've got. Guess who knows that? Anybody who has access to that tracking pixel. Certainly Facebook, any of their partners, because we've seen what's been going on lately with Facebook again in the news and possibly even facing criminal charges on some things. So they are tracking you across the web. They're filtering users' timelines. Now, this was 2016. That also hasn't stopped. They're filtering users' timelines. So here's the thing. So let's say here's how they create a thought bubble, all right? Some conservative 14, 15-year-old girl in Des Moines writes a Facebook post about believing that marriage is between one man and one woman, and that if you're born a girl, you grow up to be a woman, and you don't get to choose that you're a man. All right, so she does this Facebook post, right? Facebook just sends her to the ether. Like, she can see it. If she opens up her Facebook timeline, she sees it. If you're one of her friends and you actually go to her timeline, you can see it. How many of you actually go to your friends' timelines? That many, yeah. One? Yeah, me and you both, but I'm not on Facebook anymore, but when I would occasionally do that. Everybody else, you see what Facebook filters to you on your timeline. You'll never see that girl's post. No matter whether you're best friends with her and like everything she does, Facebook's algorithms are going to filter that post into the ether and never let you see it. She could have thousands of friends. None of them are going to see it. How many likes is she going to get? 0. And so now she feels like, oh, I have this really unpopular opinion. But somebody else in Los Angeles can post about how they're coming out as a man, though they grew up as a little girl, and Facebook will send that out to everybody and her sister, and this guy will get woman will get a jillion Facebook posts or likes and feel like, oh, now I'm being rewarded because I think correctly according to them. So it's the psychological manipulation that they use in filtering your timeline. But to do that, they've got to be gathering information about you. So there's some data mining involved in that as well. So here was the big one. July 2015, who remembers the big, when Facebook would allow you to alter your profile picture to put the rainbow filter over it? This is right about the time that the Supreme Court was handing down their terrible decision on gay marriage, right? Nobody remembers that? Okay, a couple of people do. So the idea was that a couple of years before this, there had been some things where people had thought, oh, I want to change my profile picture to show that I stand on this side of that issue or this side of that issue. So Facebook finally sort of gave it their imprimatur, created a way to do it, but the way that they did it was very psychologically manipulative, and their own papers that they published proved it was a psychological experiment to see how many people they could get to change their timeline. So what they would do is, if your friends did not change their profile pictures, nothing happened. Any of your friends that changed their profile pictures, even people that were only friends of yours, Facebook would throw you up a notification that so-and-so has changed their profile picture. You'd go to it and see this stupid rainbow filter over their profile picture, and you'd think, oh, I probably want to do that too. Be like everybody else, right? So there is this extreme psychological manipulation taking place, and they had done a study before this to show that they could manipulate or sort of psychologically force people to do this, and this was their testing ground to see, will this work? And sure enough, it did. They had overwhelming success in getting a majority of Facebook users to change their profile pictures. So it's not just Facebook. This is an article that I wrote more recently, April of 2018, about what I call surveillance as a feature. So it's Google, it's Microsoft, it's Facebook, it's YouTube, it's Twitter. They're all doing it. And of course, YouTube is Google, but they're all harvesting your data to sell to the highest bidder. And you know, what's the big deal? You know, what have I got to hide? Well, we'll get to that. So study shows Google manipulating search results despite promises. Now, this is in particularly political situations. So you do it, way back, you do a search for Hillary Clinton CRI. Well, what are you probably looking for? Hillary Clinton, criminal. Hillary Clinton, criminal indictment. No, you'd get things about, you know, her statements on Crimea, or, you know, Google would not show you. But you do the same search on a truly free search engine like DuckDuckGo, and the top results would be exactly what you expect the top results to be, what people are actually searching for. Those ought to be the recommendations, but that's not what Google was doing. And they're still doing this, by the way. So the problem, in a nutshell, is that major big tech corporations have this stranglehold on America, on the world really, to manipulate, gather data, and use that data to control us. Now, how bad is that data control? Okay, so, and I think I've got a slide on here. We'll get to it. If I don't, I'll come back and cover that. So what can be done? First, let's talk about some fallacies. So you're presented with the idea that big tech is spying on you, the government is using big tech to spy on you, they're gathering all this information about us, so you think, well, what's the big deal, you know? So here are some of the responses that I've heard, independent of whatever age group, by the way. Nothing can be done, just deal with it. It's just the way it is. You know, we breathe air, we drink water, and we get spied on. It's just a fact of life, right? We get digitally manipulated to vote for the wrong candidate. We get lied to about moral issues, and that's just the way it is, Mitch. There's nothing that can be done about it. Well, technology is an equal opportunity tool. The same tools that they're using to do that, you have available to you to fight that. So it's not that nothing can be done about it. Furthermore, millions of people around the world have learned to use these tools. So it can be done. People are doing it. And you can learn too. So here's the thing, and I'm going to cover this in a later slide, but you know, we look at the Second Amendment, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. So the understanding was, and founding fathers made these statements all the time, you know, a well-armed body, well-trained in the use of their weapons is, you know. So it's about understanding the tools that you're using. Who thinks we could take a bunch of 13, 14-year-olds, hand them AR-15s, and tell them to defend the border? Yeah, they need to be trained. They've got to understand those weapons. They've got to understand how to work together with other people using those weapons. That's the way it works. So the same thing with technology, but the average person, in fact, almost everybody, just thinks magic happens behind the screen. You plug this in, you push that button, this happens. They don't really ever understand what's going on under the hood. It's the only machine in your life that you're comfortable being that way with, by the way. Like, you want to know a little bit about why your car does what it does, why your sewing machine does what it does, your vacuum cleaner, your dishwasher, but not your computer. Because they've dumbed it down so far with pretty pixels and graphical user interfaces that truly, in the 80s, if somebody was using a computer, they knew what was happening under the hood. Today, and they were using it to create. Okay, today, most people use computers to watch YouTube videos and argue with strangers. So, this is my favorite. But Mitch, I don't have anything to hide. Before I cover my answers to that, because I haven't had a chance to add this to the slide yet, I loved Edward Snowden's answer to this statement in his book. He said, saying that you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is exactly like saying you don't care about free speech because you don't have anything to say. One day, you might. And if you don't protect this principle, this right now, it won't be there then. And as Lauren Culp, who's this chief of police in Washington State that's running for governor there, he was the only chief of police in the whole state to stand up against the anti-gun agenda. As he said, rights are not independent of each other. So you can't say, oh, I'm going to hang on to my right here, but I don't really care about that right there. If you don't defend all of your rights, you will lose all of your rights. So the idea of digital liberty rights is still being defined by policymakers. So tech is actually ahead of legislation on this, okay? So, and sadly, that decision is being made as they bring guys from big tech in to tell them what to think. They're not asking you. Your state legislator, your congressman, your senator, he's not calling you up and saying, hey, you know, we have all these issues going on. How should I vote on this? But they are bringing in the guys from Facebook, the guys from Twitter, the guys from Google. Hey, what should we do? Puppet masters. So future generations will inherit the policies that come from our attitudes about these issues. And backdoors, which is so what they're doing is they're forcing a computer program into your hard drive that you never intended to install that allows them to continue spying on you, even if you try to stop them. Okay, now there are ways around backdoors, and we'll talk about that. But a backdoor is the digital equivalent of quartering troops. It's my computer. I didn't invite a piece of government software to live in my computer any more than in 17 whatever I would have invited a soldier to live in my spare bedroom. Okay? And the reason that many of those soldiers were placed into homes in America was, well, I mean, they had to billet them somewhere, but then secondarily, they got to spy on the citizenry and decide who might be on the cause of freedom and willing to overthrow King George. So you had British spies as soldiers narking out Americans about their politics and their principles. So that's exactly what these backdoor programs are doing. They're being used to spy on us, and we need to be able to throw them off of our hard drives if we choose to. So, of course, everybody's favorite bad guy, David Rockefeller. This goes to the heart of the matter. In his memoirs, published in 2002, on page 405, he said, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interest of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it." Now, some of you may have been familiar with that quote. Can you have a one world government without a police state? No. The people won't stand for that. Can you have a police state without a surveillance state? Because you've got to watch everybody. And in the old model of doing this, the Soviets and the Nazis, they just had your neighbors and your kids spying on you. But your neighbors and your kids only know so much about you. Google knows everything about you. Every search you've ever made, every video you've ever watched on your computer, every conversation you've ever had online. And the tech actually knows more about you than you know about yourself, because you will lie to yourself about your motives. Okay, I'll admit that I do. Maybe you're all better people than I am, but I lie to myself about my motives. My motives are always pure. They're always true, and I'm always only trying to do the right thing. You all are better than I am. But the algorithms, they don't listen to your motives. They just know what you said, the site you visited, what you typed, and they cook all that down. So we'll get to that in a bit. But, okay, I have nothing to hide, going back to this. So backdoors are the digital equivalent of quartering troops. What happens when you do have something to hide? So one day, and let's talk about privacy for a second as an outgrowth of liberty, all right? So people are like, I don't care. Well, you do think some things are private. You close your shades before you get undressed, right? You don't, if you're arguing with your wife or your husband, you're on your cell phone, you're in a crowd of people, you're having your conversation, things start to go sideways, it turns into an argument, you step away from the crowd. You know instinctively that some things are private and ought to stay private, right? So that's all this is about, is how do we do that? But then what happens when a couple of years from now, you need to Google or do any type of internet search for an embarrassing medical question, and then the next thing you know, you're on Facebook, and there's an ad for a product for the thing that you just Googled. How does Facebook even know that I was asking that question? That's really bizarre. And Facebook will deny it. They'll say, no, we're not listening in. If you have the Google app on your phone, let Mitch just give you a heads up. They are listening to they hear my speech right now, even if you don't have the Google app open right now. And the reason I know this, there was a viral YouTube video. This couple that had never owned a cat, never wanted to own a cat, they've never had a conversation about owning a cat, decided to test this. So they both installed the Google app on their phone, opened it, closed it, set both of their phones on the table in front of them, and just had this inane conversation back and forth. Hey, I think we're out of cat food. We need to get some cat food for the cats. The cats are hungry. We need to pick up some cat food. Hey, did you get any cat food? And they do this for a while, right? And then they just wait. They just wait. A few days later, ads for cat food start popping up. And they paid attention. The reason they chose cats is because they watched over a period of about 6 or 8 weeks, 0 ads for cat food. And now every other ad was for cat food. They never did a search for it. They simply had a conversation in the range of the microphones of their cell phones with the Google app installed on their phone. So, I'm sorry, the Facebook app. Thank you. If I misspeak, correct me so that I can fix that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So another one is, I'll just avoid tech as much as possible. Like, if I don't use technology, I don't have to worry about it. Well, tech isn't avoiding you. Okay? It is everywhere. So I ditched Google. I got Google completely out of my life a few years ago. I run a modified version of the Android operating system that has 0 Google bits. I'm very proud of my Google-free life. And I'm giving this presentation in a room with a whole bunch of people who have Google on your Android phones, and it has served me 0 purpose because Google is still listening to this. Because they have that Google Now feature that you can say, okay, Google, and everyone's phones just went crazy. Okay, you can say, okay, Google, and it'll boing, and wait for a question. Well, how does it know you said, okay, Google? Because it was already listening. Okay, that's pretty much a no-brainer, right? And if you want to test this, do an internet search for how to find those files, because Google has to make them available to you by law. They bury them deep on their website, but you can go back and find it. I was telling a friend about this, and he's like, Mitch, I simply don't believe. I said, well, okay, let's go. So right in front of me, he opens up his computer, he does a search, he finds the page, he finds all those files, he clicks one at random and opens it, and here's what happens. He's trying to search something on his phone, and his wife is bothering him in the background. So here's what you hear in a 3-second recording. Would you shut up for a minute? Okay, Google. And he was embarrassed. He wanted to die. And I was like, oh, that might not be all. Have you ever done a Google search right after coming out of the bathroom? So might want to get that off your phone. So tech is not avoiding you, because even though I don't have that on my phone, half of you do, because about half the people in the world use Android, and everybody who uses Android uses Google products, so tech is not avoiding you. Data mining is used to create very accurate profiles, and here I'm going to get into that a bit. So avoiding technology is ineffective unless you disconnect completely. There are mountaintops in Montana where you could go and get away, okay, or Idaho, but that didn't go too swift for Randy Weaver. It wouldn't end well for you either, because you would draw undue attention to yourself. If you fall completely off the grid in one fell swoop, they wonder if there's a reason for that. All right, so data mining. I talk about data mining. What is data mining? So one of the things that Ed Snowden revealed, and this little graphic here shows it. So everything that you do, okay, is collected by someone, usually companies that just want to use it for their own purposes. Okay, and we'll cover, like Target as a prime example of this with their red card, but we'll get to that in a moment. So companies are collecting this for their own purposes. They're dumping it into a data warehouse, which is just a room full of a bunch of hard drives, servers, okay? That then is fed over into data mining applications that search that information out using algorithms. Human beings don't do this anymore. Gone are the days of the guy in the trench coat with the ill-fitting hat and the cigarette dangling from his lips sitting in your basement with headphones listening to you. Those days are gone. They just grab everything and pull it up later when they want to. The moment you come up on their radar, and right now you're probably fine. But who's to know what the next election holds and whether we'll be fine 4 years from now, or whether they're going to be parsing through all of our files to figure out whether we're enemies of the state. And that might sound extreme to you, but throughout history, that has not been extreme. So, red card. who shops at Target or has ever in your life shopped at Target? Yeah, okay. And the rest of you aren't telling the truth, but that's okay. So if you've ever shopped at Target and you've paid using any method other than their red card, they have offered you the red card, correct? Yes. Okay, so when that first started out, it was a credit card. And if you're like me, you're like, no, I've got enough plastic in my pocket, I'm good to go. So then they say, oh, you know what? Here's an idea that we can get people to use the red card. We'll make it a debit card that's tied to your checking account but can only be used at our stores and on our website. And if you use it, we'll knock 5% off your purchase. Now, cui bono. What's in it? Who benefits, right? Why would they knock 5% off the price of something just because I'm using a card that charges me no fee? Comes directly out of my checking account. Data mining. Because right now, if I go into Target and I use my Cash App card for a purchase, and the next time I go in there, I use my debit card, and the next time I go in there, I use one of my credit cards, and the next time I go in there, because I want to be weird, I pay in cash. Okay, when's the last time you paid for cash for it? But so we do that. They don't have any mechanism for pulling all of those purchases together into one profile of Mitchell Shaw. They just can't do it. It can't be done, right? But 5% off, I'll be a slave for 5% off. I'll use the red card every time. Now they have a complete profile. And they've got one of the best systems in the world for cooking down the data. How good is it? They believe that they can anticipate a purchase you're planning on making before you know you're going to make it and send you ads ahead of time. Can they do it? Can they do it? Well, a story from Minneapolis proves they can. 2015, father from Minneapolis goes storming into a Target store, slaps a flyer down on the desk, demands to speak to the manager. Manager comes out, is like, sir, how can I help you? He's like, you just sent this to my 16-year-old daughter. It's advertisements for baby clothes, diapers, formula, baby furniture. She's 16. She's still in high school. What are you doing here? Manager's like, sir, I'll check into that for you. I have no idea what's going on here, right? Father calls him back the next day. Manager says, sir, I'm still checking his what? You can stop. Had a conversation with my daughter last night. She's pregnant. And you figured it out before I did. How? Because of what she bought. 1 month, her jean size went up an inch. And she bought collagen lotion instead of feminine products. And she upped her vitamin intake. Bing, bing, bing. The algorithm says she's pregnant. Send the ads. Sure enough. And that's what they're doing. So it's Target. Who cares? Well, here's the problem, and here's why we have to care. Because the NSA is doing it, and they have access to Target's records. Everywhere you go on the web, you're being tracked. Your emails are being read. Your Google Docs. Ed Snowden pointed this one out. This is really interesting. A few years ago in a television thing he did. So you're drafting a document live on Google, or you're drafting an email at your Gmail account. By the way, that's a web-based email service. You're not creating that on your computer. You're creating that on their server. Your computer is just serving as a conduit for you to access their server. You're typing that on the internet, okay? So you stop, rethink that last clause, backspace, 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 pause 3.2 seconds, and write an entirely new clause. Here's what they're able to gather from this, folks. Not just what you wrote. It would be bad enough if they could just see the finished product. They are able, using psychological profiling techniques, to know what you were thinking when you wrote it. It is the closest thing to mind reading that has ever existed. And the algorithm isn't interested in your motives, and it doesn't buy lies. It just cooks down the data and knows you. That is very scary to me. And it's happening all over the world. So it's not just Target. It's not just Facebook. It's not just Google. As bad as all that is with their manipulation and their tactics for getting us to vote the way they want us to vote, for getting us to divulge our deepest, darkest secrets so that they can market them and use them against us, and in a political situation, actually use them against us, which has happened in different parts of the world. The Arab Spring didn't end well for everybody in the Arab Spring, okay? So the solutions. These are political problems that require political solutions. So we have to be handling it from that angle. But these are also technological problems that require technological solutions, right? What is needed is a two-pronged approach while bringing pressure to bear on our elected officials and educating others to do the same. We all need to plug the holes the NSA, other agencies, and tech corporations are using to violate our God-given constitutionally protected rights. It belongs to you. It's up to you to protect it. No one's going to do it for you. What are some of the challenges, real challenges that people face? Not fallacies, actual challenges. this is just so inconvenient. I don't want to have to go through all this just to use technology. Okay? So how inconvenient is it when you leave your home, you lock the front door? You go buy some groceries, you come home, you're juggling grocery bags, now you got to fish out your keys with the groceries, you don't want to drop the eggs, and you got to unlock your front door. Wouldn't it be easier just to leave your front door unlocked? How many of you are going to do that now that I've convinced you it's easier? No. You know why? Because you've been unlocking your front door your whole life, and you've buried the inconvenience behind the benefit. I know I lock my front door so that I know I'm the only one coming in my front door, right? So, yeah, it's inconvenient, but after you've done it 30,000 times, you don't even think about it. You just juggle the groceries and unlock your front door. Until I pointed out to you how inconvenient it is, it's been years since you've thought about it. And if you think about it, you think about it in that one moment, and you don't think about it later. When you're putting away the eggs, you're not grousing about stupid lock on the front door, right? So this is not unlike that, all right? But I'm not very tech savvy. I don't even understand most technology. And so here's where I really like hammer that idea of the Second Amendment being about a well-regulated militia. Folks, there's a war going on for your mind, for your data, for your privacy. And the tools of that war, most of them in 2019, are technological. This is something you're going to have to figure out. Now, you don't have to do all the heavy lifting. People who already care about this have already done a lot of that work. And what you're going to need to do is just pick up where they left off and use the tools that they've provided. Okay? So similar to this well-regulated militia, and, you know, they would have muster. They would call these guys out. They would be like, hey, this week we're going to go out in the woods, bring your muskets. We're going to figure out how to do this. We're going to make sure everybody can hit a squirrel at 300 yards, you know, all that stuff, right? So today there are online forums. And you can go to, like, for instance, the operating system that I'm running this on. I don't use Windows. I don't use Mac. I use Linux. I use the Ubuntu operating system, which is a Linux derivative. So I can go to askubuntu.com. And if my computer does something hinky, or I just think, hey, that was kind of out of character, I can do a search and figure this out. Other people have probably faced that same problem and can point me in the right direction. So, tools for resisting surveillance. The most secure and liberty-friendly software is free open source software. So, what is open source software? And I'm going to blow past a lot of these slides just to save time, but I'll put it in a nutshell. Imagine you go to the grocery store and you're trying to figure out dinner for tonight, so you pick up some frozen dinners. I know, gross, but you're in a hurry. So you pick up some frozen dinners. One of them looks really good. You turn it over on the back, and under ingredients it says, made with a proprietary blend of nutrients and flavors. None of your business what we put in it. Would you eat it? Okay. The corollary to that is proprietary software, Microsoft Windows, Photoshop, mystery code. They deliberately hide their code. Now, typically that is because they don't want me to be able to make a product to compete with them that does the same thing their product does. But with that mystery code, the alternative reality of that is, I don't know what's in your computer code. I don't know if there's a backdoor built in. And I know that the government is forevermore pressuring big tech and big corporations to build in backdoors to allow easier access. So unless you will show me your source code, I can't trust you. I think it was Ronald Reagan said, in God we trust, everybody else keep your hands where we can see them, or something like that, right? You know, trust but verify, right? Like, show me your source code and then let's have a conversation about trust. Well, open source software makes the source code readily available. The perfect example of that is Mozilla Firefox. It started out as a proprietary web browser, and then over time they realized the only way they were going to be able to compete, we can't sell people a web browser when they buy Microsoft Windows, they get a web browser built in for free. They're not going to buy a web browser. So instead of making the browser our product, let's make the code our product and give it away. They were like, how are we going to make money doing that? And then they figured it out through donations and grants from other foundations. So I love this. I just put this in here because I think it's funny. So you got Firefox and Chrome over here fighting for dominance while Microsoft Internet Explorer's over there eating the glue. It's my little jab at Microsoft. So why open source software? Because the source code is open, the likelihood of backdoors or other nefarious things being hidden in the code is at or near zero. Because there are a million nerds out there with tape on their glasses, not just me, but guys who actually do spend the day looking at computer code that will, they'll just look at the code and report bugs and say, hey, these 2 lines of code, the only reason they would exist is to spy on you. This has nothing to do with the product doing what it's designed to do. Let's get rid of these 2 lines of code. Also, because it's open source code, then nothing keeps anybody from taking that open source code, removing those 2 lines of spyware, and releasing their own product that doesn't have that. So the original developer has an interest in keeping his product out there. He better remove those lines of code. And that almost never happens. It's really, really infrequent. But the point is that the principle is in place so that it can happen because the source code is open. This is the opposite of proprietary code, which is, of course, closed source. It allows them to put in backdoors and other features either for their own purposes or at the request of government agencies. Spyware is a feature. Microsoft Windows is a perfect example of this. Windows 10 is designed for data mining. So one of the, in fact, several of the articles on this disk that I have out there are about Microsoft and Windows 10 and how it is forever calling home. It's narking you out about your data. It's reporting everything back to Windows, and they forced the upgrade on people. Let's see. To use Windows, you have to agree to their terms of agreement, their Microsoft Service Agreement and accompanying documents. 40,000 words. I printed it because I wanted to know. It was 110 pages. I know you read that and instead of just clicking, I agree, right? Yeah, I bet you did. Everybody just clicks. There's a comedian who talks about that clicking thing, and you're like, click, 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 click. Like you read the first page, right, and then you're like, fine, click, 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 and then you're like, click. Oh, you busted me. You got to scroll down. You got to, okay, yes, click, and then finally it's like, oh, my firstborn child of the devil, sure, click. You get to a point where you're just numb, and you'll click the next thing that comes up. You're like, now I'm this deep in. I'm just going to install this software. Click, 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 click. So you're not reading it, and they're counting on that because it is a legally binding document. So their Microsoft's privacy statement says, your privacy is important to us. Yeah, I love that. But they get to capture your interests and favorites. We collect data about your interests and favorites, such as teams you follow, blah, blah, blah. Other interests and favorites may also be inferred or derived from other data we collect. Contacts and relationships they gather. And by the way, you clicked I agree. All right? Finally, we will access, disclose, and preserve. They're storing this on their servers. Personal data, including your content, such as the content of your emails, other private communications or files in private folders, when we have a good faith belief that doing so is necessary. Who is impressed with Microsoft's good faith belief? Right? After they've just told you they're gonna snoop through all your stuff. Finally, right? Spyware is a feature. I love that. So your privacy is important to us. Your privacy is a commodity to them, okay? They need you to use their services so that they can suck up all your data, so that they can spy on you, so that they can market you, so that they can manipulate you. Okay, so with open source software, occasionally vulnerabilities pop up, but we're not waiting on one team at Microsoft or one team at Apple to discover this bug and fix it. 1 million nerds across the country are looking at that computer code right now and finding problems, or they're using that software and finding problems, and they're reporting those bugs upstream along with a proposed solution because they've already looked at the source code and they already know what the problem is. I've been using Linux exclusively for several years now, about 8 years, and I'll have some weird thing happen on my computer, and the next time I boot my computer, I get an update, and the weird thing goes away. With Microsoft, I might have to wait months for them to patch it, if they ever patch it. They'll just say, oh, you need to upgrade to Windows 10, right? So we're going to blow through a lot of this real quickly. So what is Linux? Okay, well, I can discuss Linux. It's an operating system that was designed by a guy that had been using a Unix operating system and really liked it, so he wanted to create something like it without having to spend a bunch of money on an operating system. So in the late 1980s, he developed his own operating system. It's taken off. Millions of people use it. Wall Street runs on it. The Naval Fleet runs on it. All the video games you played as kids ran on Linux. Or as kids, but because all the video games that you played in the late 90s, they were all run on Linux. Your smart TV probably runs on Linux. If you've got a smart TV, get rid of it. The two biggest derivatives are Ubuntu and Fedora. So here's the difference. So Microsoft, their business model is buy our operating system, right? So you buy a laptop that doesn't have an operating system on it, you go buy Microsoft Windows, it's $250, right? And now you're going to have to buy Microsoft Office because you actually wanted to be able to do something on that computer. So, because that's their business model. Ubuntu is sponsored by UK-based software company Canonical. They sell services to individuals and businesses. They give their operating system away. You buy their operating system, you like it, you decide you want to use some of their backup services or whatever, and so you do. Fedora has a similar model, but they make these available for free at ubuntu.com or fedoraproject.com. They both have amazing support from the companies that you can purchase and thriving online communities of people that will just help you do this, okay? So go to the website. There are instructions there for how to download this, how to put it on a USB stick or a CD-ROM so that you can boot from it, run it on your computer. You don't even actually have to install it to test it. It'll boot from the stick or the CD or the DVD. It's too big for a CD now. But it'll boot from that so you can take it for a test drive, see what you think. And you actually own your operating system for the first time in your life instead of a license to use it as per the master's guidelines. So hard drive encryption. In a nutshell, if it can be encrypted, encrypt it. Encrypt your phones, encrypt your hard drives. Keep it secret, keep it safe. Encryption just plain works. The CIA leaks on WikiLeaks show us that encryption works because the reason they have to attack endpoint devices is because they can't break encryption. They can't do it. In fact, there was a case the FBI was trying to get into this guy's hard drive. I think they spent 10 years and a few $1 million trying to break his encryption and finally had to drop the case. They were like, we'll never get it. This hard drive will be dust by the time we crack the encryption. You can crack your password if it's a weak password, but they cannot crack the encryption. All encryption is not equal. So again, open source. Because, okay, so here's a great story. That guy that started Linux, his name is Linus Torvalds, and his father is a European Union Parliament guy, and he's giving a speech, and the press is there, and they asked Linus's father if his son has ever been pressured by the NSA to put backdoors into the Linux operating system. And you know what a hairy question that is, because if you say yes, you go to jail, right? Because you're never allowed to disclose that. So he goes, no, of course not, right? Truth is, it wouldn't matter. The NSA can pressure them to build in a backdoor all they want to. The source code's readily available. And the guy from Ubuntu, Mark Shuttleworth, that started that, has said explicitly it contains no backdoors. It never will contain backdoors. They can pressure us all they want to. We're never going to do it. Okay. So most Linux distributions include full disk encryption out of the box. You just click, yeah, I want to encrypt this when you first set it up, and you're off and running. So here's that the founder of Ubuntu Linux, no backdoors, no weakening of encryption, just not going to do it. Basically, you have a right to guard your product, to guard your privacy, your data. It's yours. You created it. You own it. Do what you want to with it. So a good, strong password is a key. So rather than a password like, I don't know, my password, or your social security number, or something someone could guess. Plus, they can just do a brute force attack. They'll just turn a computer loose on you and do a dictionary attack that'll go through every English word, uppercase, lowercase, substituting numbers for letters. Computers are fast. It might take them a few hours to crack your password. But if you create some truly random, insane password, and like if I had to create a password right now, I would look around this room and I'd go table, laptop, business suit, flag, right? 4 words. String them together, substitute letters for numbers for letters, uppercase here, lowercase there, and it's completely random. A dictionary attack is never going to put those words in that order ever. So it would be a very good password and something that you can probably remember. I've got a password like that I've been using for years. I don't even live in the house that I was living in when I created that password, but I just kind of glanced around the room, picked a few items. There are other methods. You could throw dice and come up with random words using a word list. Just throw 5 dice and 53281, and then you look up word number 53281 in one of these word lists, and do that 4 or 5 times, and you've got a completely random password. So you can go to howsecureismypassword.net. I recommend when you go there, the way it does this is it runs JavaScript. So what you want to do is go to the website, let it load, disconnect from the internet, and then type in your password, because they could be, in fact, they say on their website, we could be grabbing your password. We're not, but we could be. So they even recommend that you turn off the web, get off the internet. Just once the page is loaded and JavaScript is up and running, you're fine. Test your password, kill that page, reconnect to the internet, and you'll be okay. It would take 1 trillion years for a desktop computer to crack one of my older passwords. I'm not even using that password now. And I'm learning all kinds of new numbers. I didn't know what a quintillion was. I didn't know there was such a number as a quintillion. I don't know how many zeros that is. But it would take 14 of those now for a desktop computer to crack my password. Even if the NSA has a computer that is a quintillion times more powerful than a desktop computer, it's still going to take them 14 years. I probably don't care. Okay, so we'll get through this because I just covered all that. Okay, so the internet. The internet is a thing of wonder, right? We use it to communicate with friends. We use it to shop. We use it to research stuff. It's the world's biggest library, biggest store, and biggest phone bank in the world. It's everything. And we live our lives essentially in one way or another through the internet. Like, how many of you are staying here in this hotel this weekend? Oh, me. Okay, a couple. You booked that online? Yeah, so there you go. I mean, you rent a car online. I booked my flights online. What do you not do online, right? So it's great, and we have to protect that. That is the new frontier. That is the land that we're deciding. It's not a literal land, it's a virtual land, but we all live there, folks. And I know that sounds a little weird, but it's still true. Okay, we all live in the land of the internet, and we have to defend that if we plan to have freedom while we're there. All right? So net neutrality, international control of the internet by the United Nations, other threats. We've got our work cut out for us, and we have to do it. Even a free and unhindered internet has its own dangers: hackers, unaccountable government agencies, nosy corporations, okay? So part of being secure online is about the technologies you use, and part of it is about the way you use the internet in the first place. Never put anything on the internet you wouldn't want to see on the front page of the newspaper. Just don't do that, okay? Just don't. Make up your mind from the outset what you're willing to share with total strangers and what you're not willing to share with total strangers. And then live that out. Technology, so there are tools for greater online security. So, by the way, if you're putting stuff up on the cloud, whether that's Dropbox, iCloud, Google Photos, whatever, understand this. Once it leaves your hands, it leaves your control. Who remembers the big iCloud hack a few years ago? I'm not going to get into it because it's untoward, right, with all the celebrities and their photos, right? I imagine half of them wanted to go throw themselves off bridges. I probably would have wanted to, okay? They uploaded something they thought only they would ever see, and then it was on everybody's computer screens, right? So once it leaves your hands, it leaves your control, all right? Besides, there is no cloud. That's just someone else's computer. Remember that. There is no such animal as the cloud. That's just someone else's computer that you're storing your stuff on. Do you know them? Do you trust them? Now, there is a principle called zero knowledge that means that not even the developers know your password and have access to your data because everything's encrypted when it's uploaded. It's end-to-end encryption, not just encrypted in the stream, but it's encrypted before it's sent, and it can only be decrypted after it's brought back. So that's end-to-end encryption. From point A to point B, it is encrypted. And the only weakness there is your password, but there's a company called Spider Oak that offers something very similar to what Dropbox is doing, but it's end-to-end encryption and zero knowledge. Your password happens on your computer. They don't even know your password. They get served a subpoena, they get hacked. Anybody could get from them would be encrypted gibberish. Without your password that only you have, they can't break the encryption, and your stuff is safe. So, email. Email's a nightmare. Email's like sending a postcard through the mail. It's exactly like sending a postcard through the mail. I can see who sent it, I can see who they sent it to, and I can read it. I've never done this, but I know how to. I can put a packet sniffer that I can easily download from the internet, put it on my laptop, go sit at a Starbucks, and grab all the traffic that's coming over their public portal. And email is just readable. Like, I've looked at my own email in the stream. It's plain text. There's nothing to it that can't be read, okay? So that's why you've got to encrypt your email. And there are a lot of ways for doing that, okay? You could learn GPG or PGP, pretty good privacy, which is like you set up public keys and private keys, and you got to convince all your friends to set up public keys and private keys. And nerds like me do that stuff. We enjoy it. Normal people, okay, probably want to just use something like Proton Mail. Go to protonmail.com. It's free for 500 megabytes of service. That's probably all you need. Just keep your mailbox cleaned out. It's end-to-end encrypted between Proton Mail users. And if you need to send an email to someone who's not a Proton Mail user and you want to encrypt it, you can. You create a password on it. When they open the email, they get a link. They actually go to Proton servers. They put in that password, and they can see your email and reply to it. So to them, it just becomes web-based email. For you, it's just your normal email. They've got a great mobile app for both iPhone and Android. I've been using Proton Mail for years. I've talked to the developers. I've talked to the president of the company. I interviewed him for a couple of articles I was doing. They're serious about protecting privacy. And it's zero-knowledge, open-source software. Okay. So protonmail.com. Check them out. Browsing. So I would recommend switching to a Linux operating system. If you're not going to do that, bare minimum, do not use Microsoft's browser. I've said for years that the Microsoft browser is the best browser in the world for downloading a browser I'm actually going to use. Okay? So you open up your computer the day you bring it home from Best Buy or the day Amazon drops it at your front door, boot that sucker up, fire up the internet, go on Internet Explorer or whatever they're calling it today, Internet Edge or I don't know. But anyway, fire that up, go to, do an internet search for Firefox. It's mozilla.com. But go there, download the Firefox browser, start using that. There are a lot of things that you can do to sort of make that more anonymous. The Tor project, who's familiar with Tor, the Tor web browser? Okay, I got a couple of nerds in the room, love you. All right. So love Tor. Tor can be a bit cumbersome to use on its own, but let me give you a quick primer on Tor. It used to stand for the onion router because it was layers, like if you've ever peeled an onion, okay, layers of encryption. It routes your traffic through a series of servers called nodes to create layers of anonymity. It lies about your IP address, which I think is great. I don't mind my computer lying to another computer. Computers don't have morals, and they're not going to go to hell for it. So, especially when the other computer has no right to ask my computer where I am, right? So it creates a fake IP address every step along the way. I can go and visit thenewamerican.com right now on the Tor browser, and the IT guys at thenewamerican.com have no idea where I'm coming from. It'll look like I'm coming from Germany or Canada or Bangladesh, wherever that is. Creates IP addresses at each point along the way. The result is that when used properly, Tor creates real internet anonymity. The websites you visit have no idea who you are, and you cannot be tracked. This is the method Snowden used to communicate with those journalists. This is how he was able to send emails back and forth and have conversations using Tor so that even his bosses at the NSA couldn't trace it back to him. So I'm going to move quick from here on out. The NSA actually had a slide. One of the slides Snowden linked was a slide that they did in one of their shows called Tor Stinks. The NSA might hate Tor. Let's go back, hit the wrong button. There we go. So they said with manual analysis, we can de-anonymize a very small fraction of Tor users, and those are the Tor users who made some mistakes. So I go to, let's say that I'm in some dissident, some country that's oppressive. I'm a dissident. I'm helping organize some kind of protection. Okay, so I use the Tor network to do that, and then while I'm on there, I decide to check my Facebook account. Just identified myself as the guy who was on that other website. So that's how they managed to do that. It was originally developed by the Naval. So there's Tails. I'll skip to this because I got the 5-minute warning a second ago. So this is Tails. I actually have Tails available. Tails is the Amnesic Incognito Live system. This is a live Linux distribution. You can plug this into your computer, boot from it. It changes nothing on your computer. It leaves no traces that it was ever used on your computer, routes all your traffic through the Tor network, encrypts everything for you. I've got these available outside, USB sticks. If you're interested, pop by and see me afterward, and we can talk about that. You need to be using Tails. If for nothing else, so that when you're sitting in a Starbucks and you realize that you need to transfer funds from one account to another, you don't have to use their public Wi-Fi to do that. You can encrypt that traffic, and a guy that's sitting across the room can't sniff that out. I like VPN Unlimited. I like VPNs. I'm hesitant to use free VPNs because they have to make their money somewhere, and you're essentially giving them the keys to the kingdom to use all of your data any way they want to, and they're giving you a free VPN to protect you, but I'd rather pay for a VPN. So if VPN Unlimited, is that a paid service? Then I would probably trust them. If you're going to do anything really hinky on there, and I'm not saying you ought to be doing anything hinky, like I don't know, maybe you're just curious, like, can I actually make a pipe bomb? I don't think you should make pipe bombs, I said to the camera. But if you want to search that out, you ought to be able to search that out because data ought to be free. I wouldn't do that over just my VPN. I would encrypt that traffic using something like Tails and my VPN. That way nobody on the planet but me knows that I wanted to know how to make a pipe bomb. I don't want to know how to make a pipe bomb, I said to the camera. All right. Yeah, hey, this stuff gets out, it gets crazy. Viral videos and all that stuff. All right, so leaves no trace of ever having been on your computer. I've got those outside if you're interested. And one of the other thing on here is a video on how to set up and use Tails. So if you buy the Tails stick, I will just give you one of these. So, because I want people using this. All right, so moving on. The CIA basically can get into all your stuff if you're not keeping everything up to date. They can hack your car and crash it for you. That'll cover the NSA, the CIA leaks. So there are a lot of other tools available, but if you use these tools properly, they'll go a long way toward making your life much harder for the NSA to track. If you're a specific target, there's nothing to be done for you. They're already listening in at your window with a laser. So if you're not a specific target, if you're just an average person who wants to live a free life because you're not doing anything you ought not do, the tools that I've discussed today will help you. Do I have a moment to take a question or two? Yes. Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a cell phone that you would recommend that we change to?
Yeah, there's a cell phone that's coming out. It's set for Q3 release this year. Go to Puri. So I'll spell this for you. PURI.SM. That's their website. That's Purism's website. They make laptops that run nothing but Linux and open source code all the way down to the bare metal and have power switches for the camera and microphone and the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth card. The guy actually built the company because he wanted to build a mobile phone and set his family free. He wanted his kids to be able to grow up with freedom. They're getting ready to release the Librem 5. It's going to be a phone that's going to look and act a lot like this one, but is going to run pure open source Linux with no trackers at all open source software. It's my next phone. Yes, sir. PURI.SM. If you remove the dot, it spells Purism. That's the name of the company. Yes, ma'am.
So if you have these kind of protections, does it make it so that, and you have your children having these kind of protections, does that make it so that you have no way to monitor what your children?
There's the catch-22 there. In my home, I've got everything locked down. My wife and I have an agreement just because I think husband and wives ought to have agreements. I use Accountable to You on all of my devices. I can install Accountable to You with everything that we've talked about. It does sort of break it because now I'm trusting Accountable to You to never get hacked. So, but it's catch-22. You have to figure out which hill you're willing to die on. So I'm out of time. I'll take one question, one last one.
You guys got Android and Google, but what about Apple and Safari? Are they just...
Yeah, so Apple is not as bad as Google. Apple stood their ground against the NSA over Saeed Fareed's iPhone. They wouldn't hack it for him because that would have allowed all iPhones to be able to be hacked. I was pleased to see that, but Apple is still mystery code, and so trust only goes as far as them willing to divulge their code goes. I don't trust mystery code. That's a decision you'll have to make. Like, I wouldn't eat that TV dinner that won't tell me the ingredients, and I'm not going to use proprietary source code software. So thank you all. I guess breakfast is next, and then so I'll be available for a little while after. I've got a flight, so I will have to leave eventually, like I guess we all will. Thank you, and God bless.